Can you hear me? Thanks, Tim.
Okay, folks, let's go ahead and get started. So welcome to everybody who made the trip to come in person, and welcome to all of those who are also online. This will be the last of our meetings before we make a recommendation to the executive board. So we really appreciate everyone who's been with us through this process. We got a lot of correspondence in the last the last few days. So thank you for all those who are continuing to provide input. It's going to help us make some important decision, recommendation. So before we get going, a couple of logistics. One is on the process in terms of providing a public statement, and then we'll do introductions and get going. For those who have not been here, what we do is we provide 3 to 5 minutes. And we want to make sure that we're honoring the time of those who have come so that everyone has enough time. But if people have traveled and have something that they want to share in person, we want to make sure that we're giving them enough time as well. So there's a little bit of a balance. But we're going to, we have a little bit smaller of a group this time than last time. So we think we'll be able to honor about 5 minutes for each person. So just putting that out there. Before we get going, Peter, do you have anything to add before we get this?
No, just in terms of like, and good morning, in terms of the process, this will be the last scheduled meeting of the classification committee. Come out with final recommendations. They'll go to the board and delegate assembly on December 15th. Will be across the way at the Holiday Inn here in Wilsonville, and they'll make decisions that day on the recommendations. They'll take testimony as well, so you have that opportunity too. But again, just appreciate everybody's input and feedback during the process. I'm looking forward to today's session.
Let's go ahead and do some introductions for staff and those serving the committee. Lauren, we start with you.
Yes, Lauren Brownrigg. I'm one of the assistant executive directors here at the OSA.
Chris Welch, staff.
Josh Grant, I'm the OAD rep and athletic director at Sutherland High School.
Mike Mills, principal at Hibbler. Bill Croson, superintendent Monroe.
All eyes on principal.
Nathan Stanley, principal, North Marion High School. Montia Hawkins, OSCA rep.
Shay James, superintendent in Clackamas.
Marshall Hoskins, OSAA executive board.
Michelle Napier, principal, Grantham High School.
Peter Weber, executive director, OSAA.
Ethan goes in the top superintendent, Tiger Walton School District.
Jacob Pence, 3A4A rep at large. Something like that. Oh, principal, thanks.
Randy Vigiano, assistant principal and athletic director at Ridgeview High School. Kelly Foster, assistant executive director with USA.
Chris Burkhardt, associate director, OSA.
Missy Smith, assistant executive director with the OSA. Melissa Kennedy, associate director with the OSA.
Nate Lauer with the OSA.
Online folks, can you introduce yourself?
You want to go?
Greg Mulkey, Oregon Athletic Officials.
Thanks, Greg. Jamie.
Jamie Allman, Director of Human Resources, Klamath County School District, OSA Executive Board.
Craig.
Albright, Dayton School District and Oregon School Boards Association.
Heidi's online, but she's in and out, so she might not be able to talk. That's it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Heidi Sipe, Superintendent Umatilla.
Thanks, Heidi.
Thanks, Heidi. All right, Lauren, are we starting with the 1A today?
Exactly. So we will invite up Brett.
You got the hot seat, buddy. Hot seat, man.
How are you?
Welcome.
Do I sit down or stand? Or what do you-
Take a seat.
Okay. So my name's Brett Dunn, I'm Co-1A school in Eastern Oregon, and I'm just here to talk about the recent proposal of 0 to 67. Nothing has changed in my school, the 1A school of 0 to 74. Right now our number is 74. For the last year, our future is below 65, 63, 62, 61. So the proposal of moving us into the Blue Mountain Conference at a 2A level puts us there maybe 1 year, and we petition to play back down to 1A because our numbers are going to be low. But if it stays from 0 to 74, it would be accurate for our school. Nothing has changed in our school, but 1A school. We do have some higher numbers that are on the ticket because of the peter out of COVID. So it was very attractive for students in the COVID time. That's all I'm here to talk about is the equity of keeping the 1A schools where they belong. I had no issues with it when it was at 65, I guess, because we were moving up with 6 other schools that are the 1A classification to what we call the Wapatai. which was fine because we were transitioning together. For a league anyway, but to be able to drive back and forth over the Blue Mountain Pass, the Dead Man Pass to the Blue Mountain Conference adds a lot of mileage. Even though travel's irrelevant to Eastern Oregon, if you ever get out there over the passes, we gotta travel anywhere anyway. So that's kind of all I have to say, is to try to keep it wide chain 0 to 74. If not broke, don't break it. That's all I got.
Thank you so
Gonna
much.
beat my timestamp?
You're within the limit.
Just one before you go, does anyone have any questions?
So obviously keep it at 74. If don't keep it at 74, put it back at 65, so you're transitioning to everybody, or
Well,
just
either
keep
way,
it at 74.
just keep it at 74. Like the 67 that came out recently was like shocker. I mean, one of the 65, it was kind of like, you know, we had 5, 6 of us schools, Crane, Harper, Elgin, Embler, Union, moving to the same conference. That's all 1A moving up. It's like, no, that's what we gotta do. We gotta do. And then all of a sudden, we kick out 3 that are at 67. It becomes our magical number because some other 2A schools don't want to travel, which is irrelevant. Like, sorry, if you have to travel to Crane, 600-mile round trip. We all have to do that. And like, they have to travel more than us. They're in the middle of nowhere. So, and just the equity of numbers, like the free and reduced for us really doesn't affect us because all of our meals are free anyway. You know, just the equity of the kids, regardless of what their poverty level is or what their status is, they're still kids, they're still athletes. But why do we count them less? They're still, it's gonna be equitable.
Thank you. Got it. Yeah.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
Next, we'll invite Tony from Inlet.
For the committee, Brad correspondence with 199, Tony to 201. Letter sent it. Oh, okay, yeah. Thanks.
Very welcome.
Thank you.
Tony Haddock, Kindler, athletic director. Kind of echoes some of the same things that Brett had mentioned. I think the classification is a necessary evil. Like, I mean, you have to do it, but I think at the 1A level, some of the problems that creates, I think, to get a true accurate measure of putting teams together, like-sized teams together, I think you should count seniors. I think the adjustment doesn't always work the way it should. There's still a disparity between schools that are, you know, bigger, that are staying put because of their adjustment versus the smaller school like Kindler going up because our adjustment isn't as big. I think that's important as far as the 1A goes. I sent out a proposal in October, and it talked about a little bit about that. And it got some support from over 50 ADs in the 1A that like that idea, staying with counting seniors, just counting butts in the seat. I think just alleviates some of the issues that we see. So I would promote that. I think from our standpoint, as you Brett talked about, I think we would be over for 1 year, no matter what you did, 74, 65, 67, 80. After that, we're going to be 62, 59, 63. Our numbers are not growing. We are surrounded by farmland that no one is selling to build houses on. And we're 70% out of district. So our programs aren't changing. Our enrollment's not changing. All that would happen is we would just be classified as a 2A school with 1A numbers. Our kids aren't participating any more than they have in the past, probably less. So, you know, that's an issue. Also, what Brett touched on with that league 65, that was fine because we were doing it together. It kept some traditional rivalries alive. And that was important to us. When 67 came out, that broke away those traditional rivalries. It put us over the mountain with schools whose adjusted numbers are bigger than our actual numbers. And that's a hard thing to stomach, I guess, when you are playing against schools that you know have big numbers, but have a big adjustment to go with it. I think that's frustrating. It's just frustrating to have to deal with. I know it's just part of the process, but like I said, for us specifically, I think this is a problem that I think if we don't change that, I think we might be looking at it in 4 years too. And some of the same issues, I think it's just important at the 1A level for, I don't know how, I would look at it from a 6A, 5A, 4A perspective, probably very different issues as it relates to a 1A issue. That's a problem that we face. Frustrating than anything else, I guess. I know that you could be put in the league that
should be in. So,
So Tony, I think what I'm hearing you say is you want us to go back to 65.
like, I think 74, I think you'd probably get a lot of 1A ADs that said just it was fine the way it was. And you wouldn't get a lot of complaint. Even 74 for us, I think our number is 76. So I think we would be up for a year anyways, but like our next 3 years, or 4 years, we're gonna be under 74, we're gonna be under 65, we're gonna be under 80, no matter where you put it, we're a 1A school, we'll be playing up to that 1 year, and then probably have to petition to hopefully go back down to the schools our size. But when that first 65 number came out, we didn't know where it came from. Like, it was just 65 all of a sudden. And like I said, it didn't feel great, but where it was with the schools that were in it, we all felt like, well, that's something we can do together. It's at least there's like-sized schools with us. This is gonna be a thing that we can do together. And then 67 finagled that, I guess. So. One of the things that the committee's been talking about is in their, what will be in the recommendations, is the idea of, we did this a couple of times ago where we ended up with how we help kids now and how adjustments are made, things like that. But putting a task force together to look at that, we've heard a lot of feedback regarding things like participation numbers, just straight ADM, writing context to those things. Talk about 9 and 12 instead of 9 and 11. Talk about butts and seats and what that looks like and how that can maybe look differently at potentially a different classification. You know, to 1,000, 1,200, 1,300 kids, 5 or 10 kids doesn't make that big of a difference. We're going to get down to 65 or 67. Obviously, I think so. That's one of the things this committee has talked about. Is already looking at recommending to the board to look at that in more detail. It becomes difficult in this process. Trying to just figure out where to put schools that then on top of that say, okay, we want to completely change how things are counted as well. When we did that 10 years ago or so, it made more sense to do that once this process is done and get away from the motion and the consternation around placements and things like that, and just say, okay, let's take a step back and what's best for the membership. So like, could that be different at 1A, 2A than it is at 5A, 6A? Could be potentially, but I think those are things that definitely have to be discussed and recommended as well. Well, it probably feels like you guys are taking a lot of shots. So I appreciate you being on the committee at least and being willing to listen. So, yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks, John. Yeah.
And so, James, continue.
Hey, James. Good morning. James Retag, athletic director at Union High School. I don't need to take a ton of time because I basically agree with what Brett and Tony had said. We like number 7, the number 7 better. Preserve a lot of the rivalries we have. I didn't mind Heartbreak Green coming in. The house better travel that way. Anyhow, we're a little different than Hogan, and then we're in our number direction of 20 right now. But we definitely like maintaining our local rivalries and not have to go over the paths to the north as much as possible. But do know you guys have a double task of trying to come up with a solution that you're never going to please everyone. So it's not worth much fun. I'm sure it'll need something on here. People are upset with you, but anyhow, we just didn't know. Again, to reiterate that we didn't know where the number of changes came. We were fine with 74. 65 like this again at this with that local rivalry. So 7 was fine with us. We just understand where 67 came from. So we're actually hopeful that we can stay with the both number 7. And then we'll go from there. Like I said, there's a adjustment for where we're at right now. That's the thing for us. We have to take that before. And like we're fine with 65 because that's where we're at number 7 that keep us in the keep on rival reason.
I think that again, I've had that question a couple of times about where the number came from to drop it to 65 in the proposal. Obviously, that came from the committee early on in the process. And we have heard over the last couple of years, I know the staff from 1A schools about the disparity between the really small schools and the bigger schools in 1A and 3-4 times bigger and things like that. So one of the thoughts was to adjust the number, bring down the number of schools at the 1A and see what that looks like. So I think that was part of the original piece of putting that out there. At the delegate assembly and the share outs by classification, the share out for the 1A at that time was supportive of the change to at least the number of 1A schools. We were still trying to decide between 5 classes and 6 classes. Obviously, that decision got made. I think one of the things, obviously, we've gotten some testimony from some schools about 65 and maybe adjusting that up to 67. One of the things we had heard at 65 was concern from a couple of high desert league schools about if you're moving those larger schools out, even though the high desert league may have 10 members in it, by the time you do co-ops and things like that, it really doesn't have 10 members. It might only have 4 or 5 teams. So that was, I think, one of the things we looked at as well.
That was part of the reason for the move to 67.
That was part of the reason I think we moved to 67 back. Obviously, this testimony is great to get the feedback on where people are at, what impact that has for all the students over there. So it's good to get that feedback. I think that's some of the rationale for why those things were looked at.
Yeah, and that's all. That's what I think I was missing. The word of change.
Yeah.
But
no, that's great. I appreciate the feedback.
yeah, so, I mean, for number 7, but you can ask it and hope for you know it. So I appreciate you guys. Okay.
Thanks, James.
Thanks, James. Thanks for coming out.
Brad and Lance, North Carolina.
And Lance sent in some stuff on 200 in your packet. So that was the email exchange. Lance,
No, I think that's it. You guys spoke about, you know, I heard you on us.
Good morning. Thanks for giving us the time. I'm gonna just reiterate and expand a little bit on some things that have been said already. I'm all in favor of keeping the number 74. The dynamic we face is we can all acknowledge that the socioeconomic adjustment in the county of the seniors creates an issue at the 1A level. May create issues at other levels, but specifically at 1A, you're allowing larger schools to move into the 1A classification because of those adjustments against schools that have no place to go. When I only have 30 kids in my whole school, socioeconomic adjustment does me no good. And not counting my seniors does me no good. And so there becomes a spot in the 1A classification where you don't get a choice and you've got schools that are larger than you playing down. As I looked at the last proposal, going from 98 1A teams to 89 1A teams doesn't accomplish a lot really in the grand scheme of things. And so, you know, my recommendation would be at this point, knowing that there are some other underlying factors that skew those numbers, depending on what your poverty rate is and what socioeconomic adjustment you get to use, et cetera, dictates what your enrollment will be. I look at North Powder at 81 kids and we only have 54 by the OSA standards. But I still go with 81 kids. No way in the world I should be playing in Huntington that has 30 kids and only 10 kids on their football team. It creates a safety issue and an equity issue at that lowest level. So until we can solve that issue, I'm just in favor of leave it where it's at. 1A is really, it's not a big issue. I think a lot of conversation with adjusting numbers down came between 6-man football and 8-man football, which really isn't this conversation. But I think you're going to find there's 2 different pieces to this at 1A too, where the cutoff rate is for 6-man football that has lower numbers and 8-man football that has higher numbers. Problem is once you set a classification cutoff point, it doesn't matter. You play those teams in all of those. So I'll just leave it at that. I'd like to see it stay at 74 until we can adjust some of the issues that have been kicked around for the last 3 or 4 years.
Okay, my turn, eh? Awesome. Well, if you wonder where the number 6 and 7 came from, it's say it's been the trend the last few months, right? 6, 7. That's pretty good, right? 65, 67. Okay. So I'm also the 1A rep for I'm also the 1A rep for all the 1A, so I'm big on surveys. As soon as the proposal came out on 11/20, I knew that we had a very short time. I mean, in reality, for 1As, we had 2 business days with Thanksgiving last week. As of yesterday, I had 58 responses, but as of this morning, I've got 60 responses. Of 1A voting on 65, 67, or 74. I brought the responses. If you guys want to look at them, this is of the 58 that we printed out this morning before we came over. I got 2 more responses, but as of right now, I'll probably read off of this of what majority of 1A voices are saying, and I'll read the questions off. So, sorry. Here we go. So 60 responses. So the first question, considering the classification redistricting committee is moving numbers, what would you like to see? Please choose one of the following. The option was 0 to 65, 0 to 67, or 0 to 74. 27, which is 46.6%, wants to stay at 0 to 74. 24 at 41.4% wants to stay at 0 to 65. And the 0 to 67 was 7 votes, 12.1%.
Repeat that.
The last one, 0 to 67, 7 votes, 12.1%.
So you got 2 more this morning.
Yep, to add to 60, total of 60. So this data here is 58, and I got 2 more this morning, so we're at 60 right now. And I think we had a longer time with the holiday being last week, we probably would get more responses. I think I've sent in responses this year of almost 81 AD voting in August when we were looking at doing some rule changes.
Yep.
So I do think more time would give us more accurate data. Do we have a problem in the 1A classification that justifies changing the number? Of course, I got all sorts of responses. No, no, no. That's all in here. The next question is, would you be in favor of moving the 1A numbers to 0 to 95, include seniors, and remove the ADM adjustment? Count number of butts and seats. 40, which is 67%, say yes. 19 at 32% say no. Okay. And the next one was just a question to add in there. Do we need to readjust classifications for your cycle if there's not a compelling reason to do so at the time? Otherwise, if it's not broken, why fix it? So 34 people said no. At 58%, we don't need to. 24 said yes. At 41%, saying we don't need to. That's pretty much, I mean, I heard from individuals on the committee of saying, well, we haven't heard a lot from the 1A. I think you've heard testimony that 0 to 65 and 0 to 74 is great. As soon as the 0 to 67 number came out, I can tell you my email went blowing up, and that's why I put the survey out to all the 1A. I reminded them probably 4 times. I keep reminding people I'm going to annoy the heck out of you until you vote. And we got up to 60 out of them this morning, 60 out of 98. I've talked to other people where if it is the 0 to 65, there's 15 schools moving out of 1A to 2A. The number moved to 67, there's 87, 8 go up, 7 stay back down. And I think when it comes down to the classification of 1A specifically, is we're looking at multiple sports. Obviously, we say football can't be part of it because it's a special district and that. Well, track's a part of it and they're a special district there, and we'd have no ad hoc for track, for lack of better terms. So the point behind that is that somehow with 1A, if 1A is capable of playing 6-man football at a cutoff number, you would easily be able to split the classification of 1A into 2 and have 7 classifications like we currently do in football. That would make more sense for the smaller schools and with the rumors of shrinking 1A. That fits the small school side of it. Specifically, if we were to go 50 and less, for example, a 1A, 51 to 80 for a 1B, and you're splitting the largest classification the OSA serves in half. That would make more sense than then shrinking it, pushing those to upper teams up to play with people double their size. So, but that's all I have.
Brad, when you talk about splitting and 50, have you looked at what that does to the co-ops? Because right now you might have schools that are smaller, but 3 or 4 of them co-op to be in a program, but they can go all the way up right now to 74 and still have that program. If you had that at 50, have you looked to see what impact that would have on leagues and how that would look or anything like that?
Well, and I think if you look at majority of the leagues, not a lot of co-ops when it comes down to basketball, volleyball, football is where you're going to see the largest co-ops. And I think if you look at the model of how football is working at the 1A with 2 different levels of football, your volleyball team is going to follow the 6-man players Just like your volleyball's gonna fall by even players, if cutoffs there.
That's back to what you said before, yeah, it's about when our teams travel, we're gonna travel volleyball, football together, ideally.
Yeah, it would be really nice because when you have to split volleyball and football, do 6-man, 8-man football. It creates problems with your community, you're splitting your community in half, with people that have kids. You're creating a scenario where your boys can't go support your girls, your girls can't go support your boys. It increases transportation, in the old days, football and volleyball played the same side. You went one place, one bus usually. Now we got 2 buses and sometimes 2 buses going different directions because of one playing in Crane and one playing over in Prairie City. And I will say this, I grew up in Redmond, graduated from Redmond High School, so I'm used to buses going different directions. But in small schools, we have small budgets, that does create issues.
This is to do with the travel. Our first game in football. It's 4 hours away. I mean, that's driving for. Obviously, we're going to Crane. Basketball is a little bit different, but very similar when it comes to travel. We're sending buses in separate directions.
Can you send us that?
I sure can. Let me send you.
No,
I don't know. Yeah, that can be helpful.
no, we can sure.
Absolutely.
Any questions for Brad and Lance?
Thanks, guys.
And thanks for the trip. Yep.
7.
Now we're gonna move on to Zoom and Billy from Adrian.
Hello, can you hear me all right?
Loud and clear.
Yeah, thanks, Billy.
Fantastic. Thank you all for your time and service to the people of Oregon and the students. Brad took my 6-7 joke because he and I are really hip with the times. So that's what he stole that from me. Like our brains are connected, but in all seriousness, when the number moved to 67, I was happy for the High Desert League because it brought back Harper, Crane, and that kind of solidified the High Desert League. But then I was like, well, that kind of moves some up that are actually should continue to stay 1A, you know, because I think it's an all or nothing kind of a deal, whether it's the perennial 1A school should stay 1A. And I personally like the number 80 for just a couple of reasons. First off, it brings back all of the perennial 1A schools, but it also provides the football ad hoc committee a nice number to work with. Because I know that the enrollment zone thing for 8-man, 6-man, 9-man, I like it for that reason. You can go 80 to 40 for 8-man and 39 to 1 for 6-man, and then it's just split right in half. And that also goes along with what Brad and Lance were talking about with travel with our volleyball, and because right now we're sending one team one way and another team the other way, and we're splitting families even. Also, you know, those smaller 2A schools that would possibly be able to move down to 1A, it would be easier for them to petition to play up than to play down. And that would basically affect 12 2A schools is what I counted this morning. That might be on or off, but I mean, if all 12 of them chose to play down to 1A, that leaves 2A at 36, which is the same amount of schools that were in the proposal for 4A and 5A. So, but I also see a lot of those schools choosing to stay at 2A. But the number 80 is just a nice even number for football and for travel with volleyball. That's me personally. You know, I sent that proposal to Mike. I don't know what the cutoff would be for 2A, 3A. But for 1A, that's what I think would work best for football and volleyball combined. Can I provide any clarification? But I do support raising that number up from 67.
Billy, just to make sure I heard you clearly, you said 80?
I think that's a nice even number for the ad hoc committee to work with. Yeah.
Any questions for Billy? Billy, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, you guys have a great one. Thanks.
Now we're gonna move up to 3A and Emmy from Elmira.
Good morning. Before I start, there's something that's been driving me crazy for an hour and a half. There's a typo in my letter. And as an English teacher, just so you know, it's been eating at me since I left this morning.
It wasn't really by AI.
I just wanted to get that out there because I read it this morning and I almost had panic attack.
It's 211,
so,
committee packet 211.
in
I'll
that.
give you a copy.
That'll be why we can even find it.
So, in that letter, that's just kind of, I call it kind of the heartbeat of what we're feeling, in Elmira in our community. There's a lot of conversations about kids transferring out, because of, what they consider like a death sentence with the 4A classification moving up. We already lose a lot of kids, and because we have so many schools so close to us, it's very easy, for them to just drive 15 miles instead of coming 15 miles one way into Elmira, they'll now go another 15 miles and go into. So I'm not gonna read that, 'cause it's a longer letter, and then letters from the Booster Club president, parents, that also have kids within Elmira, and our Fernridge School District, elementary through the high school, and kind of what they feel about it. So, but I just basically wanted to share kind of what the heart of our message is. And this is kind of a blanket for us in Fernridge. This is now multiple meetings where we've shown up, where small rural schools like Elmira have shown up. And every single time, the proposals change in favor of larger, wealthier schools for the outcome for our kids to see. Again and again, we're told that equity matters, that student experience matters, and that safety matters. And yet nothing in the classification system has shifted to reflect those values for communities like ours. It's exhausting to sit in these meetings month after month, as it is for you guys. And watch the same metric, the ADM, a number that has been widely criticized as an insufficient representation of student athletes, continue to decide the fate of high school athletics. It's defeating to keep raising our hands and bringing data and bringing stories from our families, bringing the voices of our own athletes, only to see those proposals still ignore the reality of participation in schools like ours. The ADM counts bodies, it does not count athletes, and that distinction is costing our kids opportunities. I'll be honest, it's heartbreaking, not solely for me as an AD, but for the kids I watch walk away from sports because the system has made them believe they won't stand a chance. It's heartbreaking to know that our families are doing everything they can, our coaches are doing everything they can, and our community is finally starting to rebuild. And yet OSA feels prepared to move us into a classification where we all know the gap will grow wider and not smaller. We've tried to adapt, we've tried to communicate, we've tried to show you what's happening on the ground, not in a spreadsheet, but in real gyms on real fields with real kids. But time after time, our concern has been overlooked. And that's why I'm frustrated today, because I feel, and our community feels, that our students are being failed by a model that's supposed to protect them. A model that's supposed to reflect equity, fairness, and opportunity, but right now it does none of those things for schools like ours. So I'm sitting here today, just not to present documentation, but to make it absolutely clear that our kids deserve better than this, and that ignoring participation realities and win percentages in favor of the ADM alone is harming them. In the end, all we're asking for is fairness. The ADM has failed to reflect our reality for years, and every cycle we feel the consequences more deeply. We're not trying to play down, we aren't asking for special treatment. We're simply trying to remain competitive and to allow our programs to grow safely. We're asking for a chance for our kids to compete in a ways that lets them grow and not give up. Moving us to 4A would undo the process we're finally starting to make. It would widen the gap that we're trying to close. It would discourage participation, it would erode morale, and it would put our athletes into matchups where the opportunity to grow looks a lot more like trying to survive.
Thank you.
Any questions for Emmy?
Thank you.
Good morning.
Morning.
Super quick, do you want to support? The want to support Emmy in her comments and then also mention that Tim, Sam, Emmy and I have had several conversations about that whiplash effect of us going back and forth between 3A and 4A. I know I've had a coach who's coached several years, 16, 17 years, and he said he's been in, several different conferences that staying in 3A is where Valley Catholic would like to be. And we're right on that number with North Valley and with Elmira as well. So we're on that order number, that it's been moved around a little bit. We know that 3A has been broken up a little bit, so our current conference has been broken into 2 different conferences, and either one would truly work. I think that we can start with Tudor's best in terms of travel, if that makes sense. So I know currently it's broken up a bit. So I want to echo that one more time, that we would like to be in 3A. That's been mentioned by our students remaining, our population really remaining the same or going down. So in numbers, I'll use football, as I know it's not counted in how we develop leagues, but our football team had 27 students this year. So it's not like we have massive programs that are huge. Yes, volleyball, boys basketball draw a lot of kids, but we also have a no cut program. So in all of our programs, so that makes that kind of inequitable when it comes to girls basketball or girls soccer. So kind of unbalanced, if we are placed in 4A, so if that is the direction this committee goes, we understand where that line might sit. I did send in correspondence last time via email. I just want to say it out loud this time, that we prefer to be in the Tri-Valley Conference. There are several of the competitors we already play with, so compete with, inclusive of football, which again, I know is ad hoc, but it's inclusive of football, which makes kind of our leagues look more similar, so across the board for all of our teams. So I do want to reiterate that if we are placed in 4A, we want to be considered for the Tri-Valley, knowing right now the balance of the numbers of teams and leagues is what the focus is. So understood. But yes, but we have talked to our community, and our community is aware, very aware that we may go 4A. Our kids are very aware we may go 4A. They have reiterated they would like to be 3A, so kids and parents like booster club meetings and such, but I'm here to also say if we're going to be 4A, we do have a request as well to run the charge.
Okay, T, have there been, so the numbers are like 36 and 42, but if we were to drop the number to that drop, that'll take 3 up to like probably 50 schools. We have and then we got 4A down to 18. So there's like a lot of volatility will come in from that move. That as a classification with 3A, is that a problem to be at 50?
I would say no personally, but I think that comes down to the state championship. So, but I think also, 1A talking about their number, where that might go, affects 2A, et cetera, the domino effect in the middle range is where that.
If you're proposing to go this way, so that you guys could be where.
Next up, Angela from Corbett.
I assume there wasn't movement from the proposed league prior to this one, because maybe we didn't have documentation from the superintendent, or maybe information from the league that we would be moving into. So we did have a letter come in this morning, come in hot, that I sent to the league. Just like 5 minutes ago. So when I say come in hot. There's a letter from our superintendent also in support. So I'm here on behalf of our kids and our community and our coaches. Just again asking to be moved from the proposed Greater Oregon League to the we just feel like it is a better competitive balance. There's schools that look like us, and it's a better fit for Corbett. I have spoke with everyone in the Lewis and Clark League except for one school, and it's just because we haven't connected yet. So I do expect that by the end of the day, I will encourage from all 5 schools. And 4 of them so far, welcome us. I don't want to speak for the 5th without talking, so I can't give you a resounding 100% without talking about it, but that is that's what we're requesting. And I'm curious if there are any other obstacles to us giving that, or questions for me, or anything else you would need from me to help with that.
It's always awesome.
I know.
That's right.
I know, but in this case, I mean, there's 6 right now. And Oregon League, and there's 5 in the Clark League, so I'm the reason that we couldn't. So, anyway,
When you're talking about getting the feedback 4 and 5 so far.
Yeah.
The big one from the Lucifer was the 80.
those are the 80.
Yep.
And if it's helpful, I mean, I have heard from the coastal schools, those are the ones that would be farthest away and most impacted, and they're fine with adding us back. And I say back because we're with them now. In the actually.
Any questions for Angela? Thank you for bringing that suggestion.
Next up, Derek from Riverdale.
Go for it.
Hey, everybody. Just wanted to come back, make sure I got a holiday card from each of you. This year, want to send my condolences to Kelly on the game this last weekend. Regarding 26-14, I think. Or
Something.
yeah.
Any more time. Call them straight. Remember that.
Yeah.
No beach.
Just kidding.
Bye.
One of the things I did to Peter and Kelly about it is very low on your totem pole, so I'm just gonna get it out, which was the name of the leagues in the current proposal. Which we changed it from Coastal Range League to Lewis and Clark League. My thought would be to leave this the same. The reason being, leagues have accounts with banks, and to close one account, it's just a logistical nightmare for the schools to figure that out, especially if schools are changing leagues, and so a suggestion would be to name them the same. I know that would be thing, but yeah, we got that on the record.
Thank you for your
Taking tedious notes right now.
Just to be clear, under that, you would say under the last proposal, 3A1 would be the Coastal
Range League, yeah.
3A2 would be the
Would be the Lewis and Clark League, just to keep them the same as they are. They are currently. Yes, exactly.
Well, Angela wore the shirt to represent, I think.
She did.
I did.
She did, yeah.
Then I would not, I could still wear the
Still wear it.
sweatshirt,
She's still with us.
so we have another good argument.
So I have 2 kind of things. I'll start with the overall thing. I think the current proposal makes the most logical sense in terms of travel, which is a big thing. For a lot of schools, you've sat here and listened to travel. I know as Riverdale, we are currently in the Coastal Range League, which means we're going to Warrenton, Neocony, Rainier on a Monday night, on a Tuesday night. We start school later than most schools. We start at 9, so when we do that, our kids are missing 3 of the 5 periods during the day. It's taken a lot on our kids. It's long nights, it's over the pass, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I think the current proposal does a really good job of minimizing travel, or just putting the schools that are closest to each other with each other. And that's not to discount what Angela is saying. I totally understand where she's coming from, and representing her community. And I certainly respect that. But I do think the current proposal makes a lot of sense. And the current proposal, PAA is a short drive. She's still coming to Riverdale, right? That travel is much less for it. And would be much less for us as Riverdale as well. And that's kind of the next thing, I guess, as the Riverdale Athletic Director, the current proposal is what we would prefer. I would tell you 4 years ago, somewhat later in the process, I was not there, but we were in then the Lewis and Clark League, and then all of a sudden we got put into the Coastal Range League. Which was hard for our community, right? And by the time I think the people that were there realized it was too late. And we have enjoyed our competition with the Coastal Range League. We have good relationships with all those schools, and my plan would be to continue to schedule those schools in non-league games where we have a little more control of when we choose to go to them, right? So the hard part of being in the same league is the league schedule is made and you have to make those trips over the pass based on that league schedule. Whereas I would imagine 3A1 and 3A2 will continue to schedule with each other, just like we already have. But we can do it on our own schedule to best support our students in the best way possible. And so as the Riverdale Athletic Director, I would say we would prefer the current league that we're in, and would not like to continue to travel the coast if at all possible, like we had done for years until the last time this committee met. And so if you are gonna shift things around and do some things, we would prefer to stay in the metro area within our league if at all possible. And then the last thing, and I've said it a million times, and I'll keep saying it again, is that the 3A, 2A, 1A classifications, the majority of our sports are in special districts. Right, and so when you're putting teams in leagues, although it does impact us, the 3A2 and 3A1, I'm assuming, are going to continue to be in special districts moving forward. So I think it's 2/3 of our sports are in special districts. And so although this does have an impact on us, specifically with volleyball and basketball, it's a minority of our sports. And so I feel like that's why I feel like minimizing travel should be the priority, because that's the one thing we can control within that. And again, I understand where Angela's coming from, and respect her advocacy for Corbett. My advocacy for Riverdale is to tell you where we want to be, but then also tell you that I think it makes sense, logical sense, which I know doesn't appease everybody, but that's kind of where we're at. Nailed it. I rehearsed it. Yeah. I had just enough time for the walking.
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Wait. Any questions for Derek?
So just a question based on Angela's testimony and last time, and Corbett coming out of that league, going to the other league, that greatly impact your league. Reduce your travel, because you're not going out to Florida unless it's on.
Right. Yeah, I think as long as all the numbers stay the same, it's still 6 and 5, you know. I think the logical part of it, right, is now Corbett is driving by the entire Lewis and Clark League. Which I guess is up to the committee and up to you guys. You want to do that? Obviously, it'd be great if it could be 6 and 6. And I know, again, KT's advocating, right? So within those adjustments, that changes too, right? So based on KT's testimony, if you change that number, now Valley Catholic's back in 3A, right? And that again, that throws something off that way. So I mean, I think we're fine with 5. I think, you know, we would like to be with Corbett. I think we have a good relationship and it makes sense. But if you sent them to the coast, you know, I'm sure they would schedule us in non-league so they didn't have to go as far.
Riverdale is keep the names as is. Same league, minimize travel.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Derek.
Thank you.
Now I'll head on to Zoom again and Zach from TAP.
Good morning. I'm just coming back to kind of reiterate what I've heard over the past 2 or 3 meetings that you guys have had there. I've had, you know, many 4A, 3A athletic directors state that TAP does not belong at the 4A level. I went back and just did some looking. You know, right now the proposal is to have us in the Oregon West. Each one of those schools by average has 188 more students enrolled according to their ABM. Statewide, if I just look at the 4A, it's about 120 students average more students that are enrolled at each one of those schools. If you look at our enrollment coming up the next year, we're going to end up losing 12 kids, which is going to put us back at the threshold for the 3A level anyway. If you go 4 years, we're losing another 50 kids. If you look at our elementary, it's upwards of about 150, 160 kids here in 6, 7, 8 years. Obviously, we'll conduct the reclassification aspect again, but those are huge numbers. I think we've done a really nice job. If you look at the last 20 years of Taft, I'm the longest standing athletic director, just starting my 5th year. We went through 12 to 13 different ones in a matter of 16 years prior to my arrival here. The consistency that we have, not only as athletic director, as administration team, but also I've got coaches that are 3-sport coaches that do football, girls basketball, track and field. They've been around for, basketball was 7 years. I think football's 10 years. We're finally starting to get baseball and softball back together where we have consistency within our coaching staff. And the enrollment's huge. Going into that 4A level with those Oregon West Conference schools and looking, most of them provide a JV2, JV and varsity teams programs within all 3 seasons. Taft boys basketball is the only program that has a JV2 program, and that's because my assistants and I get creative and work the quarter system, make sure our kids are getting 5 quarters just to establish that JV2 program. There is no JV2 or freshman at football, volleyball. Girls basketball has JV, baseball only JV, softball's only a varsity the last few years. So I think that scheduling dynamic within that league is gonna be not detrimental, but it's gonna be a lot more difficult for those other athletic directors and coaches to get fill their schedules for their teams. One thing I haven't heard is what is the future for high school athletics and middle school athletics? It's a tough time in education right now. We don't know the unknown about federal budget cuts coming down the pike, so we're still waiting to hear on what that looks like. But I would recommend or ask that the board considers Taft to go into the 3A West Valley League. Right now, there's 5 teams in that league. Putting us as the 6th team would allow easy scheduling. The last 4 years, we've been part of the Pac West, where it was at 9 schools, then 11 schools. And so minimizing or taking that whole league and putting it into 2 would allow for additional games, additional tournaments. Right now, we have to start our league play during the winter, the week before Christmas break, in order to get all of our league games in before all of our preseason games are taken care of. So I just really ask that, we've been 4A before prior to my time for about 6 to 8 years, and there was not a lot of success. Our numbers have increased as far as participation wise, but we're still nowhere near the participation of that Oregon West Conference. If you look at the last 3 years of the Oregon West Conference schools versus Taft participation in the fall, winter, and spring, 7 of those seasons, those schools on average have 51 to 75 students engaging in athletics. That's a huge mountain for us to climb. I think going to a 4A would be detrimental to our not only just our sports programs, but our kids' morale and our culture that we're trying to establish here at Taft.
Question for Zach. So Zach, you're looking for the number to change so you can go down to 3A.
Absolutely.
Yep. Thank you, Zach.
Thank you, guys.
We'll stay on Zoom with Tim Sam at North Valley.
Good morning, everybody.
Hey, Tim.
Hope your hearts are as full as your bellies were on Thursday at some time. Thanks for putting up with seeing my face again and hearing my voice. Added some correspondence this morning, so you probably didn't have it for your pre-meeting meeting. It's good to see Zach and Emmy talk about the kind of the plight. If I could stamp my name or even change my name from Emmy to Tim Sam or the school name, that's very similar to the situation North Valley is in. Same kind of conversations we're having with community members, coaches, kids. We will always do the best we can with what we're given. We have three core values, and one of them is resilience. So we teach whatever we're given, we're going to be resilient. But I've stated multiple times, I'll state again, I don't believe that North Valley is a 4A school, and I'll certainly add I don't believe Elmira and Taft are 4A schools onto that. That being said, if indeed we stay in the 4A classification, I appreciate the shifts the committee did make in considering. I'm reading the notes, trying to address the largest ratio in all classifications except for 1A, between the high and the low, the factor that still leaves 4A with the biggest factor. And 5A with the smallest factor, a factor of 1.76 at the 5A level, factor of 2.06 between the low and the high at the 4A level. So would ask that the committee, if we stay a 4A school, the committee consider sliding some of the top schools from 4A to 5A to make that factor more equitable. That'll make it more equitable ratio wise and competitive wise. And I outlined some of that in the correspondence, but it would mean possibly just moving two schools from 4A to 5A and then from 3A to 4A. 3A right now at 42 schools in the classification, the highest of the three, 5A, 4A, and 3A. But I want to help provide a question to or an answer to Marshall's question. Is 50 too many, or is that okay at 3A? I think the number to get Elmira in, I think it would put it at 49. Right now, 6A is at 47. So I guess I would ask if 47 is okay for 6A. If 48 is okay for 2A, why wouldn't 49 be okay for 3A? That's all I have.
So Tim, on what you sent in this morning, again, adjusted a couple of numbers between 3A, 4A, and 5A. Tweak those numbers a little bit to move some schools around to provide some of those, address some of those concerns you had, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions for Tim? Thanks, Tim.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We'll stay on Zoom and move to 4A and Sam from the Hidden Valley.
I don't have anything at this time, but I appreciate the opportunity and thanks for all the work that you all are doing.
Thanks, Sam.
Thanks, Sam.
How about Casey from Marshfield online as well?
All right, I'll keep this brief. I'm Casey, the athletic director, assistant principal at Marshfield. I wish I could have attended in person, but I appreciate the opportunity to share a few thoughts here with you guys online. I did send correspondence to Peter last week. Marshfield High School does support Draft 8. This draft keeps important rivalries together, strengthens our community engagement, keeps travel manageable, and maintains balance both financially and academically. Looking ahead, I would be interested in being a part of some exploratory conversations before the next reclassification cycle in 2029, especially after listening to some of the 1A testimony. Looking at the possibility of possibly adding a 7th classification or taking a closer look at the simple plan to see if either of those directions could help alleviate some of the problems and help schools across the state. I want to thank the reclassification committee. I know that you've dedicated a large amount of time and effort in this process. I know it's a tough job with, some people happy and some people unhappy. And I appreciate your time and dedication to doing what's best for the students in our state. So thank you very much.
That was number 208 in the packet that you sent in. Thanks.
Thank you, Casey.
Okay, and then Jim Taylor from the Dalles here in person.
Jim Taylor, athletic director and assistant principal of Dallas High School. I'm here also representing the Tri-Valley Conference. Walter Stahl sent an email after the last meeting. Did that get in the record? Kelly? Talk to him on the way. He's our director of the conference this year. Anyway, everyone in the Tri-Valley, we're very supportive of both number 7 and number 8 proposals. I don't know what the others feel about Valley Catholic. I know we're happy with North Marion. I know Valley Catholic is part of the history of Tri-Valley. I think when they started admitting boys, I believe they came into the Tri-Valley Conference. That's before my time. But whatever the committee feels there, I feel that would be fine with the rivalries. We just don't want Wilsonville and Sherwood back. I'm pretty sure that's what we'll be working on that one. So yes, we're in support of that. It keeps the rivalries that we've had over the years. Teams have come and gone. North Marion's one of those teams. And the communities, like I've said before, are similar size. Our competition rate are similar size, so it's a very balanced league, and travel is minimal. So we appreciate that.
Question for Jim? Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we'll move on to 5A and we'll go on to Zoom and State Representative Emily McIntyre.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. I know it was a last minute addition, so I appreciate it. I submitted a letter to, I don't know officially to testimony, but definitely through email. So I thought I would just come on this morning and read it. Dear Oregon School Activities Association Reclassification Committee. I am here representing myself, Senator Dick Anderson, State Representative Pam Marsh, Representative Alex Scarlatos, Representative Vicky Breeze Iverson, and Senator Jeff Golden. As elected officials representing communities across the state of Oregon, we write to express our deep concern regarding the current OSAA reclassification process, particularly as you approach final decisions for the next 4-year cycle. The placements being proposed for several schools within the districts we serve, including Eagle Point, Ashland, North Valley, Taft, and Elmira, create significant and unnecessary challenges for both students and schools. For Eagle Point and Ashland, the proposed leagues will require regular competition against substantially larger schools, such as Medford High Schools, Grants Pass, and Roseburg. These matchups present clear disparities in enrollment, resources, and competitive capacity, placing students in situations where the mismatch between teams is both physically dangerous and emotionally demoralizing. Should these schools opt not to compete in these mismatched assignments, they will face serious difficulties in filling full schedules. Despite having a reasonable and viable alternative in the Skyline Conference where they already play many of the proposed opponents on a regular basis. Similarly, schools such as North Valley, Taft, and Elmira are slated for placement at the lower end of the 4A classification, where they would be consistently overmatched by substantially larger schools. These same schools have clear, appropriate placement options within the 3A classification that would ensure safer, more equitable competition. We are also concerned that during your most recent meeting, hybrid league alternatives were presented that would address many of these issues, yet were not adopted. Additionally, one of the committee's original charges was to seriously explore a move to a classification model. However, that option was effectively set aside in favor of maintaining a system that continues to widen inequities, particularly for rural schools south of Salem. As elected representatives of schools participating in OSAA, we request clear answers to the concerns outlined above and urge you to reconsider Proposal 8. There remains sufficient time to correct these inequities and produce a reclassification plan that is fair, balanced, and truly reflective of the needs of Oregon's diverse school communities. We respectfully ask that you take these concerns seriously and act to ensure a classification system that supports our students. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Any questions for Representative McIntyre?
Thank you, Representative.
And now we'll go to Alex Linkard at Ashland, also on Zoom.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we got you, Alec.
Perfect. Thank you all very much. I just want to add my principal wanted to be here, but unfortunately he is in the hospital right now. But he wanted me to let you all know that he is in support. So as you all know, we were recently moved from the 4A Skyline Conference, which we had previously been in on the last 7 iterations of reclassification. And so we were moved to the 5A, 6A hybrid. And so I just wanted to kind of shed some light on participation numbers for the proposed leagues, 5A, 6A versus the Skyline Conference. I did email this out, but I don't know if you would have it.
Yeah, we have it, Alec. Committee members, it's 209 in your packet.
Perfect. So I know there's a lot of numbers on there, so those are more visual aids, but I'll kind of read through this and then happy to answer any questions. So my official ask is that we move the 5A cutoff, which is now 581 to 1025, back to where it was at 590. I know some other schools have mentioned wanting to adjust as well. So Ashland High School, in terms of participants, currently has 419 student athletes in OSAA sanctioned athletics for the 24-25 academic year. So among its regional peers, 11 schools have higher participation numbers, ranging from 45 to 386 more athletes compared to Ashland. The closest competitors are Hidden Valley with 45 more athletes, Klamath Union with 68 more athletes, and the largest gap exists with Grants Pass, which has 386 more athletes. North Valley is currently the only school in the 5A, 6A, and 4A Skyline Conference that has fewer athletes than we do. So when we look at these numbers across the board, Ashland High School overall in participation numbers for 4A, 5A, and 6A combined is currently 107th out of 113 total schools. So we're in the bottom 5% overall in terms of participation numbers. I know that some of the other schools in the 5A, 6A hybrid have said that we can play their JV, which does not feel the most supportive to students. It also shows that there's clearly an inequity in matchups there. Football is also currently at 22% win rate, and I understand that's through the ad hoc, so that's separate, but our football team would then be playing 5A, 6A, and love those kids, but we have not found the most success in our 4A league, and this year we won 2 games. So within each classification, currently at 5A, we're the lowest 5A school based on last year's number, 32 out of 32. If we were in 4A, we would be the 28th out of 31 schools currently. And in 6A, there's 2 schools smaller than us, but that's also because they petitioned to play up. So clearly our numbers show that we are much more of a 4A school than a 5A school. I know that many of our student athletes and coaches and community members are in support of this. A big part of this is looking at our developing programs, what we have. I know some schools mentioned earlier, what if they have JV2 and things like that. Many of our sports, such as baseball right now, we only have a varsity. Softball, we only have a varsity. And so there is a trickle-down effect. And so the next part I'm looking at is just what is the OSA from your website and just speaking on that. So part of it mentions equitable competition. No school, team, or individual should be treated as any more or less than another. So placing Ashland, 419 participants in a 5A, 6A hybrid routinely matches us against schools with 650 to 800 participants. That scale gap translates into larger tryout pools, greater roster depth, dedicated substaff, and more specialized programs, which is an inherent competitive advantage that is not equitable. Consistently scheduling us against those schools treats our kids as less by normalizing a mismatch, which the mission says should be avoided. The next part's for promoting equitable participation opportunities. The suggested 5A, 6A placement will directly reduce opportunities. Sorry, did you have a question?
There was no question.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought I heard something. My apologies.
Actually, sorry.
I get a little break there. I do have a question.
Yeah.
The number that you're using, so say 419, I think is the number you read. So if you, Alec, are a student athlete at Ashland and you do 3 sports, is that 3 or 1?
That counts as, I need to look again, but I believe we count those as 3.
Thank you.
Of course.
And just to further clarify that, on the information that you submitted where you talked about being 28 to 31 at the 4A level, 32 to 32 in the 5A level, that's all based on those participation numbers, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay, got it.
Perfect. The next piece is just standardized rules of competition administered equally and fairly. So while rules are uniform, league construction is the de facto rule that determines fairness. So a structure that regularly pits a 419 athlete school up against 750 to 800 athlete schools systematically advantages one side. Equal rules do not cure equal matchups. And the last one is allow no one school to outweigh its brethren. Participation size is exactly how schools outweigh others. In the hybrid, opponents' participation bases often exceed Ashland's by a large number, and that persistent disparity is the opposite of the principle. So I just have one more thing to read here, and then I will be finished. I just want to say thank you all for listening to me. Thank you for taking the time. I know it's not an easy process. I know there's a lot going on, a lot of schools affected in positive ways, and we also, you know, like was mentioned earlier, we're gonna, whatever comes up, we'll face it with resilience and continue to grow. So with that said, our job is to help kids grow, build self-esteem, self-respect, and self-reliance so they leave Ashland as confident, capable young adults. That's harder than ever in a world of social media pressure, housing instability, and other real challenges. School activities are one of the best tools we have to keep students connected, supported, and learning how to reset and persevere. This is why placement matters. Ashland currently fields 419 student athletes. The proposed 5A, 6A hybrid places us against schools that routinely field 700 to 800 participants, including roster depths that make equitable participation in safe competitive contests harder to achieve. In contrast, the 4A Skyline schools are much closer to our scale, which means more meaningful minutes for developing players, healthier sub-varsity levels, safer fatigue profiles, and a comparable amount of travel, which means more instructional time compared to our current Midwestern League placement. I recognize that the Skyline Conference would have 8 teams, which includes Cascade Christian, who is playing up. OSAA's mission is clear: provide equitable competition and equitable participation opportunities for all students and ensure no school is treated as more or less than another. Placing Ashland in a 5A, 6A hybrid, despite our participation size, works against that mission. A 4A placement aligns with OSAA's core values and with what our students need: fair matchups, real chances to contribute, and a substantial path to growth in every program. I'm urging the OSAA Reclassification Committee to reconsider the proposed 4A cutoff of 581, which was recently lowered from 590, only affecting one school, Ashland. The numbers shown above clearly highlight what the previous 7 proposals supported, which is Ashland High School being a 4A school within the Skyline Conference. Given these facts, assigning Ashland to a 5A, 6A hybrid appears inconsistent with OSAA's mission of equitable participation and falls short of the duty of care owed to smaller roster schools. It risks undermining student safety, development, and access to meaningful playing time, and is difficult to justify under OSAA's own values and beliefs. So we ask that OSAA reconsiders and align with our placement with comparably sized programs in 4A so our students receive the equitable experience that OSAA promises. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Alec. Any questions for Alec? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll stay online one more time, and Dave from Eagle Point.
Good morning, everyone. Again, thank you for your time. I know it has been a lot, and we appreciate it very much. Today marks the 3rd time I'm providing facts for your consideration. Previously, I've shared data about schools in our current classification that only have a single high school in their district compared to others who have multiple high schools and open borders. So also happens at the 4A level. Our superintendent, principal, longtime school board members, and community advocates have shared their concerns about Proposal 7 and now 8 that will group us with schools 2 times our size or more. Others have testified about the advantages private schools around Oregon have as they're allowed to recruit with no ramifications. Proposal 8 places Eagle Point in a 5A, 6A hybrid with schools considerably larger than ours, ones that we rarely if ever compete against at the varsity level. For the past 4 years, we've played varsity teams from South Medford, North Medford, Grants Pass, and Roseburg an average of 5 times per school year. Current proposal would have us playing them 64 times per school year, including in sports where our students could physically be in harm's way being on the same field. Having to play mostly 6A schools and all other team sports would be a disaster at this point in time for a school that won 26% of all varsity contests this fall against 5A and 4A schools. Playing our varsity teams against larger schools' junior varsities would be equally demoralizing. Similar to what Emmy from Elmira shared, that scenario would be a death sentence for our school. And like Alex just said, we want equitable competition, and our kids deserve that. A hybrid plan tied closely to Proposal 8, otherwise known as the simple plan, allows our school to play closer to home, improving student outcomes in the process with increased class time. For the postseason, schools playing in a hybrid will be part of their assigned classification and compete in district-style tournaments for the opportunity to advance to state tournament play. Done properly, hybrids will work. With all this in mind, today I'd like to use the remainder of my time to ask for answers as to why Proposal 7 and now 8 are good for Eagle Point High School. At this point, I believe we have about 3 minutes. So again, thank you, and I'll look forward to your input about why that will work for us.
Hey, to be clear, the simple plan, the most updated one you sent was a week and a half or so ago. That was the one you emailed to us, correct?
That is correct, Peter. It's listed under my name on the various proposals.
Yep. It's 189 in the packet for the community. Yep.
And guys, like we previously stated, schools like North Valley, Taft, and Elmira would also be helped with the simple plan. So again, I'm just looking for your input as to why placing us in a 5A, 6A hybrid is a good plan for us.
Dave, we're just looking at your plan real quick, if you're wondering why there's so much silence in here.
Okay, thank you.
Dave, one of the things the draft 7 or draft 8 with the hybrid plan, one of the things that I think the committee, when we've had our discussions about it, has talked about is the travel concerns. Specifically looking at schools from Eugene and South, and looking at under that hybrid situation, some of those travel concerns get reduced under that hybrid proposal. I understand from your perspective at Eagle Point and what Alec was sharing as well, that's at the expense of the competitive balance issues. Is that correct?
Yes.
So under the simple plan, that brings back the Southern Oregon schools traveling to Sheldon, South Eugene, and in the Midwestern at the 5A, the Eugene area schools traveling down to Eagle Point and Crater, correct?
No, it doesn't, Pete. Basically, it puts us in the same
with the hybrid. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it puts us in the same district, but it would only at the end of the season if teams, qualified for a district tournament, then they would travel up there. It just gives us so much more flexibility and puts us, like I said, the schools we play right now are the 4A schools locally. We don't play 6A schools.
Got it.
And I know that one of the questions you asked was, why, the rationale behind the current, proposal for 6A, 5A Southwest hybrid. And I know that one of the conversations that we had in developing this was, the balance between the smaller, schools in that hybrid, like Ashland, Crater, and Eagle Point. Ashland, especially Ashland and Eagle Point, and the travel. So there'd be some competition and travel and meet that. It would attend to those issues that have been brought up multiple times. But also attending to the travel issues and the competition issues for the Medford schools as well. And so that was a lot of the rationale, was trying to find that balance between some of those schools in Southern Oregon that haven't been as competitive. We heard Ashland talk about participation, but also the travel issues. And those are two things that keep oscillating back and forth. Sometimes travel is the issue, and sometimes competitive balance is the issue. So that was a lot of the rationale. And the point was to put that out to the athletic directors so we can get input from you on it as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, I believe you've received our input and Ashland's, Iton. And, basically we feel we're being sacrificed to help larger schools. And we don't think that's fair, especially when there's, we're an hour and 15 minutes from Klamath Falls. We can easily go there and play schools that are much more like us versus playing the Medfords and Grants Pass and Roseburg.
Thanks, Dave.
You're
Anyone
welcome.
else on the committee? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, now back to in-person and Chris from LaSalle.
Thank you very much for being on the committee. I know it takes a lot of time to have a soccer coach to manage to get through a season and run a business and make a family and do this. I know it takes a lot of time, so thank you guys very much. I just want to bring up a little bit of a South perspective. And it's not lost on me after listening to people talk about hours spent traveling. Numbers that I'm going to be saying are not in comparison to some of the things that have been said by other schools throughout the state. But we were recently placed in the Northwest Urban Conference as opposed to the East Metro, which we've been in for a lot of iterations, I guess. And just a little bit about LaSalle. We are already in the Northwest Oregon Conference, essentially in the Portland Metro. There will be two conferences at the higher level if this is the decision that's made, just like for the beach. East Metro would make sense from a travel standpoint. On average, if you take out the outlier at the river, which is the furthest transportation trip that we would make, it's 21 minutes on average to the 5 other schools that we'd be going to. We are in the Milwaukee High School boundary. As a private school, we wouldn't be in that conference with them, which doesn't seem logical from a transportation perspective. We're really close to Putnam, Parkway, Centennial. They're very, very close. If we were to be in the Northwest Oregon Conference, our transportation on average is 37 minutes. If you take out the outlier of Hillsborough, to be fair, with it being the longest school. With it, it's 40 minutes on average. So we're going to do what you guys tell us, obviously. We're going to go where we need to go. They're both great conferences with great schools, and we have great relationships with one another. We play each other a lot. But I just ask that you dive into this and look at other situations that you guys, investigate when you make these types of decisions to say, does this make sense? There's certain sports where it's not that big of a deal. But when you have multiple sport athletes that are going and getting out of class a lot, and it makes it difficult when you're driving past Putnam of Milwaukee to get to this. And we've been doing conference for a long time. And then I would just ask for transparency. When the last proposal came out, it said, it was balancing travel with your folks to be at the conference and to have life-size schools. Based on my analysis, that didn't really make sense, with the numbers that I ran, so I'd ask that you dive in a little deeper and try to get a sense for, what would the reason be? I know competitive balance, after looking at all the schools, that's a conversation, and it seems as though, there's a way to make it work. There's advantages and disadvantages related to the conference. When you look at it across the board in all sports. The last thing I'll say, just to be on record, I know that football was not necessarily something that we were supposed to weigh in on when we were coming to testify or to put forth our recommendation as to what we would like, but it's really hard to disconnect that decision when you're sitting here knowing that the football ad hoc committee does utilize classification as something to make your conferences work and your placement. We are a 4A school that plays up, and understanding that we would likely have to play 5A football with the current ad hoc committee's rationale, it makes it quite difficult to understand how to come in and say what kind of classification we would like to be, whether we would say 4A or move up to 5A. I'd ask that you, as a classification in the district committee, knowing there is a football ad hoc committee that looks at that decision, have those conversations to know that if a school is a certain classification and decides to play up, that might not necessarily be the best situation for the school for football. If you're a size school that you are, knowing that enrollment is a key indicator for football success, it would be in our best interest to play against schools that are like sized for the sport of football. And that's not necessarily an option for us given the current governance, if you will. And that made this decision difficult to say whether we should.
Just to make sure I captured some of the points that you're making. So as it currently stands, you're in the Northwest Oregon Conference, and you'd prefer to be in the East Metro Conference so you can play against teams that are closer.
It's logical to me.
Okay.
But I know that that's going to change St. Helens. I did the math on them, and it's quite challenging either one that they're in their travel, right? So there's a domino effect.
You see a different solution besides that, right? That competitive balance, travel, 6-7, competitive balance, travel. You see another solution.
I mean, the Willamette River seemed like a good line to use. I don't know, right? Like it's new territory when you look at all the schools that are on in consideration. Only 2 of them don't have historical or current presence in the Northwest Oregon Conference. So everybody has a claim to stake, if you will, so I don't know. It's when you start to broaden out this conference and get it all the way from Hood River to Hillsborough, I know that's a difficult travel that's been happening for the last 4 years. Like I said, they're both great. We're going to be able to make it work. On average, it's not that much mileage, but it just didn't seem to make sense to drive past schools to go to an conference. What would you what you guys think?
Chris, you said in current draft date in Northwest Oregon, without Hillsborough, roughly 37 minutes. The average trip with Hillsborough 40.
Yeah. And that's my math. Like I'm
gonna trust your math. But in the East Metro, you said without being comparable without the river is 21.
Yeah.
What about what?
30. So it throws out. That's what I was trying to compare to take out.
Yeah, makes sense.
And we can't be most people are super close. I think competitive balance wise, it's really difficult because I know a lot of things change in a year or two. You can have a strong program that you're competing against, and all of a sudden they're not as strong, right? And so it's hard. It's bleeding. But that's why I try to take that out of it. It's a challenge. Year in, year out for us to field teams And I'm not just talking about the highest level that we're at fielding, right? It's JV2, JV, trying to figure out who has teams so that you work in your transportation numbers and putting buses together and getting people places and trying to do shuttles, if you will, that makes sense in the Portland metro area. You can kind of send a bus to Putnam and go come back, pick up kids. It significantly helps to keep kids in class. And now we lost to a certain degree going out 26 to Liberty and Aurora.
Thank you, Chris.
Well, it seems fitting that the person who first started us off at our first meeting, Rob Bonner, will be the last person.
I'm the last. I may as well. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for what you do. First off, echo the plan Dave submitted again. I appreciate him putting that back on the radar, the simple plan that works well for Cook County. But my overall arching issue would be probably the adjusted number. And a couple people have talked about that. And again, I offer my support in moving ahead and on the committee to look at that number. So I'd love to be a part of that in the future to help. From the very beginning, I've taken kind of threw that number away. Well, I brought it back because I had to, right? So I'm looking at that, but looking at straight enrollment has always been my sticking point, which is why I don't feel we belong with the IMC schools, the band schools mostly. Redmond Ridgeview much closer to us. But I look at our adjusted because I had to, and where our current adjusted is 566. You look at the 3-year average, and we're at 658, well into that 5A number. Next year in October, when the new numbers come out, when this current number 25, 26 numbers hit, we'll be at 625. In one more year, we'll be at that 655 when that adjusted comes. But my hang up is we're not putting an adjusted number of kids on a bus to send them to the IMC. We're putting 566 on a bus adjusted to go. And so that to me is my main issue. There is a huge difference. Because I'm forced to look at the adjusted, I took the enrollment number and added in seniors of all the IMC schools. So the IMC, the ODE senior class for all the IMC schools, and then I adjusted from there with the reduced number. And that number is very clear. Like Summit, well, last year's ODE number is 355 seniors. Well, Cook County has 166. I started with that message, so I'll end with it. That is a clear difference. And so adding those numbers back, I think if we look at senior class numbers and just go straight numbers with no adjustments whatsoever first, that's going to give you a really clear idea of like what schools look like. And then, I'd like to be on the committee and look at different creative ways from there if we need to, or just go straight numbers. But that's my main message today. And again, you allow me to sit here. Any questions? Great to see you.
Thanks, Bob. Any other people who didn't sign up who want to testify?
Can we ask a question? Just after everybody testified, sure. Okay. After just hearing the testify by everybody, is there a reason the decision has to be made today, or there can be an extension of this committee, considering your last proposal came out literally a week before a holiday? Is it possible to extend to get it right the first time so we don't go to a 4-year situation that can't be corrected?
You got it, Brad. Honestly, I don't think so. So again, we added the December 1 meeting a month ago. It was originally on the calendar. We added that as an extra opportunity to have feedback, which again, was great to get that feedback. But the board and the delegate assembly meet 2 weeks from today. They take testimony at that meeting. The board will take testimony at that meeting as well on the final recommendation, whatever that final recommendation looks like. But I don't see extending that process any further. Again, we get into middle of December, decisions are made. State Championship Committee comes on top of that. People start to look at scheduling and so forth and get that rolled. So I don't see an extension of this group at this point.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Tim?
Just a question for clarification. I thought I heard you say, Peter, but just checking, does the delegate assembly vote on approval of this, or is this a board item?
So it's actually both, Tim. So the executive board hears, takes the final recommendation. They were the group that put together the classification committee for the handbook. The executive board takes that final recommendation. They approve school placements, league placements, etc. Because of the way the Constitution is written, the delegate assembly later that afternoon approves the cutoff points. So because that has an impact then on how many delegate assembly reps we have with the number of leagues, et cetera, et cetera. So it's kind of a two-part process on the 15th.
Gotcha. And do they also have the ability to adjust cutoff points, or do they just approve or not approve what is given to them?
Well, so typically the executive board, when they meet in the morning, they'll hear testimony. They'll receive the recommendation. They'll hear testimony. They'll deliberate. They typically go into a short work session, come out. Here's their final decision, any adjustments to the final recommendation, which again could include school placement, whatever that looks like, league placement, those types of things. And then the delegate assembly in the afternoon looks at those cutoff points. So I don't know if that answers your question or not.
It does. Thank you.
Yep. All right. Thanks everybody for coming today and throughout the process. We appreciate it. Convene to a work session and come up with a final recommendation and get that out to school as soon as we can.